We have the pleasure of having with us the Minister of Sports Development, John Henor, is with us in the Lagos studio. Greetings to you, sir. Thanks for finding out time to be with us on the show tonight.
Thank you, Yemi. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Austin, well done. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Minister. Good to have you join us on the show.
Good evening. Good evening, too. Good evening.
All right, let's just dive straight into it. It's less than 100 days to the Olympics, and of course, a lot of people are scrutinizing Team Nigeria, looking at the state of preparedness. And as somebody who should know, what can you tell us?
Well, that's correct. I mean, it's 99 days today. We have some of our athletes that have qualified. I mean, the qualifiers are still going on for some of the sports. I mean, just recently, the Super Falcons, qualified for the football event for the first time in 16 years. I'm glad for that, and I think that Nigerians are also glad, for that. In terms of preparations, if you try to look at it from, the talk that preparing for an Olympic has to be a 4-year thing. It has to start immediately, the particular one ends, then we're very far away from that. But what I can assure is that we're going to have some little bit of more time to prepare compared to what we did when we went for the African Games. It's a lot of work is going on to make sure that even with the little time that is left, that the country makes the most of that time. We're going to make sure that in terms of our local campaign, that our athletes will make it possible for them to get to camp much earlier. Before we went for the African Games, the most we had our athletes in camp was about 3 weeks. I can assure that we're going to have not less than 2 months of camping, and close to the games, the Olympic Games itself, we're going to make sure that we are able to get our athletes to arrive, either Paris or somewhere close to Paris, to also have benefit of having to camp close to, the proper, Olympic Games.
Yeah. Let me throw this one in before I yield to my colleague, Austin. I like your approach to handling issues in Nigerian sports, and I know you always like to talk straight, realistic. Now, a lot of people have listened to you. You've talked about, we should have done this 4 years ago. So what should be the expectation from people who want to see Team Nigeria compete realistically? What should they expect?
In terms of the outcome of the Olympics?
In terms of the outcome of the Olympics.
It's a few days ago, I had to say it. I said this. I thought, look, if you watch the trajectory, since, our dear president assumed office and we got sworn in, the sports sector has proceeded reasonably well. Quite a lot of records, have been broken under this administration. In football, we went to AFCON, beyond expectation. We played finals. After 24 years, Osimhen won the African Best Player Award. And so many others. I just mentioned the fact that the Super Falcons have qualified for the Olympic, football event after 16 years. We went for the African Games. We retained the second spot. But coming beyond expectation, I believe, for example, that just like so many things went down, and the current president is having to, tackle all of them because of how bad things were. The expectations of Nigerians after the African Games wasn't that we're going to come as close, right? But we came second. We won more goals than we did in Morocco. So for me, I think that riding on the crest of that, I may not be very particular about the particular sport, but I look forward to having the Nigerian Team Nigeria, break that jinx again of coming home with an Olympic gold. I mean, the last time we had it was in 1996 when we won, 2. That was the first time we ever did. I think we haven't been able to win any more gold outside, perhaps. Maybe there's a certain goal that is given, to Nigeria because somebody who won gold, an American, had some issues. That was after had doping issues. But I look forward to that. I mean, I can't wait to have Team Nigeria come back from Olympic Games. And I'm not just saying it. I'm looking at the different sports that we've qualified. I'm looking at the sports that have given Nigeria more glory. I'm looking at the sports that we had, we're very competitive in the African Games. And I'm targeting some specific number of them. And I'm working very hard, trying to, you don't just, there is luck, yes, but luck is not founded on nothing. So there's a lot of planning that is going on. For the African Games, I had a ministerial podium performance committee, headed by one Professor Ken. He and his team worked tirelessly. And in the report they just submitted to me last week, one of the things that I took out of that report was that they found out that the sports that listened to them and took their advice and took the committee work seriously also turned out to be the sports that gave us the medals in the African Games. Now, I'm going to more than retain that committee, and they are working, and I've given them a target, and we have a goal, and we're hoping that we'll be able to achieve that goal. Yeah.
Awesome. Honorable Minister, good to have you join us on the show once again. The last time you were here precisely was 5th September 2023. I see now that you've gathered some experience on the job. On that show, you promised me that you're not going to be a football minister. Have you been a football minister?
Austin, I'm going to allow you to judge. I'm going to allow you to answer that question. But all I can say, Austin, is that it's I'm Minister of Sports Development. I'm Minister over more than 30 sporting federations, and that 7 months and counting, I have tried and I've worked hard enough to give attention to every of the sports. I mean, tomorrow there's going to be a boxing event in Lagos. I'm going to be in attendance because I believe that, I mean, if you look at sports as one sector that is about the most engaging of the Nigerian youth, you can't limit that engagement to any particular sport. But having said so, Austin, we must also realize and appreciate the fact that almost every country has a prime sport. Almost every country, I mean, it's if you go to India, you're talking about the cricket and all of that. It's not, John Owaneno's fault that football enjoys the greatest followership in our country. And that when we go to compete, it's when we're competing in football that it excites the greatest attention of Nigerians. So like I said, I mean, I'd like you to judge. I'd like you to provide an answer to that. Very reasonably. I think I've tried not to be, a minister of football.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a good way to land. And I'll keep reminding you because you were at the African Games and you could see for yourself that weightlifting, for instance, can give a country 30 gold medals at the Olympics. Wrestling can give you 20 gold medals. So it should be so wrong for us to just place our attention on football. You mentioned that you have about 7 months experience on the job now, and you've seen sports at first sight. Honorable Minister, what areas, when you look at challenges of sports in Nigeria, what areas needs major attention?
Well, I think I can say this very quickly. I have a 6-point agenda. That 6-point agenda is, we call it WAFER. WAFER, W stands for welfare of athletes. A is activation of sports as business. I is infrastructure. I mean, F is funding. The other E is activation of grassroots sports. And then the last R is, reform of the different sporting federations. I mean, it's starting from the welfare. I'm very bothered and I'm very challenged by the welfare of our athletes, both those who are currently, still plying their trade and those that have retired. And I cannot wait to put together a system that responds to this. I mean, there is the issue of, sports as business. We inherited a, national sports industry policy, that was approved by the last government in 2022 that, talks about sports as business. I mean, I cannot wait to have sports work for Nigeria the way it's working for other climes. I mean, I cannot wait to have people have more orientation, more oriented, towards sports as business than as leisure, than as entertainment. I mean, as just some couple of moments ago, on a flight, as I arrived to Lagos, I won't mention his name, but a journalist who were interacting and he talked about, sports and said, is it not leisure? I mean, that is how far that we still are. And that is how much challenge that I find. I mean, the infrastructure challenges, of course, you know it even more than I do. The fact that even as we tend to promote sports and want to see sports, continue to play the role that it should, the debt of infrastructure remains, very outdoors. I mean, it's there's a challenge of funding. There's all of this. So I'm not just going to say that this is what it is. I mean, there's a challenge of getting our federations, to deliver and to work according to what they should do. Because whatever happens in terms of the various competitions is going to be a fallout of the different sporting federations and how proactive they are. And I mean, how much, they take their job seriously and all of that. So all of these are in totality are part of the things that are challenging and are part of the things that, me and my team and the Ministry of Sports Development are continuously working tirelessly to make sure that we are able to overcome to the extent of our abilities.
All right, Honorable Minister, let's address the elephant in the room. The Super Eagles of Nigeria didn't start the campaign, the qualifying campaign, the series. Didn't start it well, and now we're in a position where there's a vacant managerial position. A lot of people are worried. You're the minister, but also, like every one of us, you're a sports fan. Everybody is a football fan. So are people right to be apprehensive that, look, we're going to play qualifiers less than 2 months, we have this situation. So what's your reading of the whole situation?
I mean, taking it from where you started, I mean, the campaigns for the next World Cup have started. I think that we've not had a tremendous start. I mean, it's a shaky one. And therefore, there's a lot of mileage to cover, given that. So, I mean, we didn't go for the last World Cup. We can't afford not to go for the next, and therefore, everything needs to be done. Coming after, AFCON, and coming after, our tremendous show somewhat, I think that everybody expects that we should be able to consolidate on that, and take off from there. Yes, unfortunately, like you've also mentioned, this senior national team, doesn't have a coach. We've had to, when I played 2 friendlies and had just, Finidi George, oversee those 2 matches. I mean, my hope, and you've also, mentioned the fact that, yes, there is the first responsibility, of getting the coach, lies with the NFF. And I've been in touch with the NFF because I think that it's Nigerians didn't expect that after AFCON and after, the contract, with Coach Pesairo came to an end and wasn't renewed. Nigerians expect that would stay as long and not have a coach yet. But the NFF is conscious and is mindful that our next World Cup qualifiers are coming up in June. What I can assure is that in the next 1-2 weeks at the most, that the senior national team will have a coach. My engagements and interactions with the NFF, suggest and indicate to me that NFF is conscious of the expectations of Nigerians. The NFF is conscious that they cannot afford to lead the country, to another, non-appearance at the next World Cup. The NFF knows what Nigerian football lost not being at the last, World Cup, and they're working very hard, to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. We're in constant touch and comparing notes. So that, and we know how interested Nigerians are in terms of what happens to the senior national team and to our football, and work is going on to make sure that there is no disappointment.
Okay. All right. Let me just probably yield to my colleague, Austin. Probably has a question, probably just a question more before we wrap this all up.
Okay, Honorable Minister, I want to go back to the Olympics because it's a big deal. Right here in the United Kingdom, they are done and dusted. In the United States of America, long ago, people already know the program, they know what they want to achieve with the Olympics. What sort of program has the Nigeria Olympic Committee, because it's their show, what sort of program have they submitted to your office? What are the milestones that we are chasing with this Olympics? We know that some of our athletes have qualified, but as a country, what do we want to achieve with this Olympics? I want you to tell us what the NOC have said to you, and as a ministry, what do we want to do with the Paris Olympics?
Well, I thought I'd mention something about this, in the course of this program. Like every area of human engagement and endeavor, it's in terms of the goals that we're expecting out of these Olympics. Of course, what we expect will happen is that we should be able to improve upon what we did in the last Olympics. I've mentioned, for example, the fact that after so many years, after the Atlanta 1996, that the time has come for Nigeria to record another gold medal, if not one, even more than one. I think that we're working towards that. I've mentioned the fact, for example, that, you've mentioned other clients, the United Kingdom, the United States. Unfortunately, Nigeria is not one of the countries that are going to say that preparations and everything is done and dusted. And I'm not going to say why. As somebody who is part of the sporting sector, what the lingering problems have been. I wish the problems were not there, but the problems are there. So what do we do? I mentioned, for example, the fact that I have a ministerial podium performance committee that is working and looking at what we want to achieve. It's looking at the different sports where we have competitive advantage. The sports, for example, that we're doing well and we've done well in the most recent past. We're working with the NOC committee in terms of the plans for training and for opening up our camps, both local camps and camps abroad. We're looking at all of that. And we're hoping and quite hopeful that given all the things that we're doing between the Ministry of Sports Development, between NOC, and between the different sporting federations that have athletes that are going to represent Nigeria at the Olympics, even those that still have qualifiers, working together. So, my perspective is that a lot of seriousness is being given to this. Nigeria is going to compete with the rest of the world and working very hard to make sure that we are competitive enough to represent Nigeria well enough and to give Nigeria that kind of, the kind of international respect that, performing well in a sports competition would require and would deserve.
Yeah, because it's 99 days to go, Honorable Minister, and it's very, very important. For instance, we should be knowing the sort of kits, as basic as kits that, our athletes will wear. What sort of, cultural heritage we want to show out there. Those basic, preparations for people to start feeling. So corporate Nigeria, can also support. Let's go to the grassroots. At Channels Television, we've been supporting sports at the grassroots. The last time I told you we're champion of grassroots football development in Nigeria and the classics. What can the ministry do to support organizations, corporate bodies like Channels Television that are promoting sports at the grassroots?
I mean, what the ministry can do is part of what I have said. Under our 6-point agenda, there is going to be a focus in terms of grassroots sports development. If channels and other agencies that have been at the bottom of promoting grassroots sports have done so without the support and without the interest of the Ministry of Sports Development, I mean, that's not what's going to be the case now. We have 6 zonal offices across the country. Those zonal offices have existed more in name. You know, the present Ministry of Sports Development is making sure that these zonal offices come back to life because they are closest to the grassroots, and that if the ministry wants to focus on grassroots, the ministry is going to use these various zonal offices to anchor the different grassroots programs that we have. So channels and every agency that is involved in grassroots sports promotion and development is going to find our zonal offices handy enough and on ground enough. The Ministry of Sports Development is willing and ready to collaborate with channels and other agencies that are similarly interested in grassroots sports development, because that's the future of our sports. I mean, as our aged athletes at the elite level, get set to retire, it is grassroots sports development focus, which Channels has been pioneering, that is going to be able to provide, the feeder to replace these elite athletes. And we cannot joke with this aspect of sports.
All right. I guess that's a very good place to let it land on the show tonight. Honorable Minister, I want to thank you for your time on the show today. Hopefully, when next we have this kind of conversation, we'll be talking about success for Team Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the kind of support that Channels has continued to give to sports, and for everyone, I thank you.
All right, we're going to go on a break right about now. When we return from that break, we'll continue with what we have on Sports Tonight.